Good morning, brothers and sir. I choose this is statement number 7. Hope is always grounded in communion. In this time of phenomenon of COVID-19, people are still hoping that soon this virus will be banished. Hope is unpredictable. We don't know how it will be happen. According to Marcel, hope is a strange inner mutation spreading throughout humanity. Remember, hope can transcend time and space, like the meaning of human existence. Also, according to Marcel, hope is not optimism, but the creation of ways for us to flourish. Hope is also in a mystery, is to understand the very essence of hope. If there is hope, there is always the possibility of despair, and only where there is the possibility of despair can we respond with hope. The essence of hope that both Marcel and I believe in is the verb form of hope, hoping that something happens or becomes the case, which is essentially the same as wishing or longing for something. Like on this pandemic, we are hoping that we gone for we gone for it because we are already captive by our own fears and etc. That's why we are hoping that someday we gone for it on this situation. Hope is always dancing with faith. One always believes for the next possibilities, but more than believing in the possibility, he hopes that this particular idea of the possibility would take place. It opens the idea that it is, in one way or another, impossible to hope for an afterlife or for eternal life bliss. If you would without having faith in God, it is because such supreme being sustains the faith and in turn the hope that one is having. People are always have hope for something that soon it will be happen. In fact, there can be hope only where there can also be despair. The truth is that there can, strictly speaking, be no hope except where the temptation to despair exists. Hope is the act by which these temptations is actively or victoriously overcome. Captivity tempts to despair, and since hope is the way to gun for all on this captivity of our own, but Marcel explained the hope strange and different from the body's vitality. Even though the body is on the brink of collapsing, hope is able to live on. He adds that it is meaningless to establish any psychological or physical theory of hope, since it is impossible for one to fail to tell what the trial shall do in him or her. How then do we hope in the midst of our world's brokenness? A brokenness on this pandemic which holds us captives in our own world. To answer this, let us going back to Marcel's reflections on the human experience of hope and how it may aid us in liberating ourselves from this situation on this pandemic. Hope is essentially the availability of a soul which has entered intimately enough into the experience of communion to accomplish in the depth of his of will and knowledge that transcend act, the act establishing the vital regeneration of which experience afford both the pledge and the first fruits. This hope likewise provides man with an avenue for a communion with God. This must not only be contained within oneself, rather it must be extended from oneself to the another. This bond between the self and the other to the absolute is moral. It's what Marcel calls love. Hope is the greatest happiness of man. Whoever much he may suffer, it is the remedy for all despair and grief. It is the gift, it is the chief blessing of man, and hope is always rational visiting. It makes life worthy life and indulges other virtues like courage, perseverance, and will to live. It brings smile to parched lips and laughter to desperate hearts only due to hope. We are able to wait for tomorrow, and hope is the only commodity which is never ending and is omnipresent on this time of pandemic. We need to hope. If there is no hope, life will be dull and miserable. There will be no inspiration, no goal. Life will be like the stagnant waters of a pool, like goes on because we can hope. When we fall in our ventures, we are in despair and disheartened. It is hope and hope alone that sustain us, keep us alive, and inspire us to try again. Hope has the power to teach us to strive, to seek, and to find, and not to yield. In Matthew 25, Jesus said, "This salvation depends on whether we extend hospitality to the stranger and meet the needs of our other marginalized brothers and sisters." We spoke about individual judgment, but also about the judgment of nations. This passage inspires hope, fear, and even sadness. Hope because it provides a blueprint for life. Fear because it means that we cannot dismiss our opponents, but that our fate are inextricably connected. Sadness because the goat in this passage banished from God's presence to their eternal punishment. Fail to recognize who they are until it is too late. There will come a time, Jesus teaches, when all the empty talk, rationalizations, and spin will end. It calls us to renew our individual and collective work with the list of our brothers and sisters and with each other. On this time of the pandemic, people still striving and hoping that soon it will gone for it and someday they go back in the normal life. Still people hoping that until the end they they are hoping that this virus will be banished and to go back in what is reality. But this is the reality that we need to face. That hoping and hoping someday that this hope will be help us to see the reality itself.
reality in a sense that we are still hoping that we gone for it on this situation.